Mike, thank you very much for sitting and talking with me today. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
And I know you're very busy grading papers right now, being part of the faculty at UCLA's English department and education department. I'm the faculty of UCLA's education department. So thanks for talking to me.
You're welcome.
And the reason I wanted to talk to you is because you and I actually worked on a case together.
Right.
You called me and asked me to help you out with the situation that you had with your stepfather. And could you just discuss a little bit what that problem was?
Sure. Well, my mother died about 6 or 7 years ago. My stepfather was the strong one, took care of her through all of that. And then once she died, he began his own slow decline. And he was able to live alone and do fine and drive to the store and all of that. And then about a year ago, that began to change dramatically. He had much more trouble moving around. He was starting to be forgetful. He was making some really bad financial decisions. And to make a long story short, after a series of medical visits and whatnot, it was determined that he had been suffering a series of small strokes. Nothing that was physically noticeable necessarily, but it certainly was making it more difficult for him to ambulate. It was affecting this, it was contributing to this confusion and this disorientation. So at that point, it became clear that something had to happen. I tried to get some neighborhood help, some folks from the church. This sort of worked, sort of didn't, and then he ended up taking a turn for the worse and going into the hospital.
And do you know what precipitated that?
Well, I believe, if I remember right, he went to his doctor's appointment, and the doctor took one look at him and realized that something wasn't right and hospitalized him. So that was the turning point, Susan. That was where it became clear that things could not go on as they had. And I was at a loss as to what to do at that point. What do I do? What do I do in terms of finances? What kind of care is available? He absolutely did not want to go into some kind of a facility. And so given that, what kinds of conditions could I create in the house that would make it possible for him to stay there? So all of this stuff is overwhelming to me. And, you know, I work full time. I live on the other side of town from him. It just became overwhelming, as I said. So I knew that there were people like you. I didn't know much more than that. I just knew there were folks whose living it was to try and help people in situations like this. And that was what precipitated the call.
And I'm glad that you called me, by the way.
Thank you.
So when he was going to come out of the skilled nursing facility, you really didn't know whether or not going back home was the most appropriate place for him, right?
Right. Certainly that was an issue, but just all the other kinds of things that come up around a decision like that, the legal dimension, the financial stuff. As I said, it was overwhelming, and so I called his lawyer and asked if she had any resources, since, as I said, I knew that folks like you existed. I just had no idea how to contact them. I mean, how do you look them up in the yellow pages? Under
Right.
what, right?
So Geriatric care management.
Good. See, I didn't know that.
It's a profession.
I didn't know that, but now I do. So that was then what led me to you. And, you know, there were just so many kinds of issues that were on my mind, and they ranged from the seemingly mundane to
like the clutter in the house.
Exactly. Who can I get in there to clean up the house? What about the rugs? We may as well take advantage of the fact that he's out of the house to take care of the rugs. What about safety bars? What
about all those cords that were on the floor?
What about cords that are on the floor? Right. What about how can we get the rugs down and make sure? So all that kind of seemingly simple stuff, but when you live 30 miles away and you're working and you don't know the neighborhood resources, how do you do that? So it ranged all the way from needing somebody who could help coordinate that sort of stuff to the big questions like how do we finance this? You know, what resources do we have available? And what are the legal dimensions of all this? What do I need to be doing to put myself in a position where I'll be able to legally help him with his financial decisions. So
Do you-
all of that stuff led me to you.
Do you feel like you got a lot of that resolved?
Yeah, a whole lot of it. I mean, some of it is still in process because things change, and I think that's another important thing that I could say to folks, and that is that you may resolve things at a particular time and place, but what you can bank on is that things are going to change. Things are going to change in the neighborhood. Things are going to change with the person's health. Things are going to change financially. Just things are going to change. And so I think we did a terrific job of getting things set up and stabilized for the moment. And now we're at another point, actually, where I need to be talking to you again because further things have developed and his health is deteriorating. And so where do we go from here?
Right.
Yeah.